Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take our cat bones and we're going to hook them up to our character geometry. So that process is called skinning. Okay? To do this, we're going to use a modifier. The modifier can be found under the Objects tab, and under the Modification tab, and then underneath your modifier list. So the modifier itself is called Skin. You have to skin the character geometry. Okay? I've had a lot of people try to skin the character's bones, the cat bones, and you cannot skin cat bones. You can't skin them. Alright? If you try to do that, it's not going to work. It's going to break. You're going to have a big issue. You actually have to go, at that point, down through every single bone in the entire character and delete to remove the skin modifier. So it's a pain in the butt to even turn it on. So be very, very, very careful that when you skin, you're actually skinning the character geometry. So if I switch over to geometry here, what we're going to do is we're going to skin the torso and the arms and the legs all in one shot. Okay, we'll start with that. The head is actually really, really simple because the head is much easier and it's all standalone. Okay, so we're on character geometry filter. I'm going to pick the character geometry. Right now it's still showing that I have a turbo smooth solution in the stack. I actually want to collapse this before I skin it. Alright, so I'm going to right click on this and I'm going to convert it to an editable poly. That's going to not delete the turbo smooth, but it's just going to kind of make that the new solution. So this is our new character geometry. Alright, and now we're going to go in and we're going to find that skin modifier. So it's right here, skin. And what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to add a bunch of bones that are going to be used to control that character geometry. Alright, it's really pretty basic. Couple things can screw you up. If I go to add bones, I'm going to click on this little add bones button here really quick. I get this drop down list of all the different bones that are in the project. Some things that can kind of goof you up a little bit is like you might have other cat objects in the scene. If you have other cat objects in the scene, they're going to be listed in that list and you're going to have to differentiate between which one is actually inside your character. Okay? How do you know which one's inside your character? It's really pretty simple. If you were to select the cat bone parent object, it tells you. Alright, so this one's called base human. If I wanted to like rename this number 3 character, that'll help you eventually differentiate when you get into your skinning process. So if I look at the bones here again, notice that we just changed the name and now you have your bones for the number 3 character right there. Okay, and look, there were a couple other humanoid characters that were somehow created that are somehow in the scene. So that helps me kind of break this up and I can figure out like what stuff was. Okay. Let's go ahead and take a look. And actually something's a little bit off on that. I might have named the wrong part of that. Let me just go back and check really quick. Okay. Yeah, for some reason, let's see. I'll put this bone here. Oh, it's still coming up as base human for the other bones. Okay. I guess I would have to rename each of the bones in there. Anyway, let's go back and we'll take a look at this really quick. So, if I pick the character geometry and we go back to add more bones, what I want to do is I want to look for this little icon. It looks kind of like an ice cream cone. It's like a triangle with a dot on top that actually is supposed to represent a bone. Alright? There's a big, huge drop-down list with that's completely collapsible. Alright, and if you keep expanding it, you should see all of the different bones that make up your cat object. Alright, there's a lot of stuff in here. It takes a really long time to click on each one of those little over arrows and fully expand that list. The shortcut to expanding and condensing those different menus like that, you can hold down Control and you can just pick the arrow by itself. So if you hold down Control, it's going to automatically fully expand like everything underneath it. Alright? And what we want to do is, from this big list of bones, we want to pick the bones that we want to most explicitly use to control the character geometry. Okay? You could technically pick everything and you could add every bone, although you don't necessarily want every bone controlling the character geometry. It's such a simple character, they're really small, and you don't necessarily need every spine segment and the neck segments, maybe like the toe flanges and stuff like that controlling everybody. or controlling the character geometry. So I'm just going to pick the pelvis. I'm going to use the thigh. I'll grab the calf, the foot, the thigh, the calf, the foot. I'm going to leave out the spine stuff. I'm going to go right for the rib cage. I'm going to leave out the collarbones. I'm going to go with the upper arm, the forearm, the palm. We'll leave out the neck. I don't need the head for the body. Right? The head's going to be used for the head stuff. And then we'll go upper arm, forearm, palm. And that's pretty much it. So if you think about that stuff, pelvis, thigh, calf, foot, rib cage, upper arm, forearm, palm, upper arm, forearm, palm. Those are the bones that are going to be used to drive that character. Alright, if that's too much, I could probably actually take away some stuff in the leg, because he's got these kind of little nubby legs. So he probably doesn't need that much control there. You could probably get away with upper thigh, lower calf. Like, you could probably get away with that. Regardless, I'm going to go ahead and select those. When I select those bones, notice they get added to this list over here. Okay? At this point, your character is skinned. It's not skinned very well, but it's skinned. Alright, so let's check it out. Let's see if it works. I'm going to go back to my cat bone filter. I'm going to pick the parent object. I'm going to go over to the motion tab. I'm going to make a walk layer. I'm going to hit the play button. And we're going to watch him walk horribly. We know that this is the result right now. The bones are driving the character geometry. It's just not well. Okay, so now let's take a look at what's actually happening. So I'm going to leave him walking. Alright, just because I want to exaggerate what I'm about to show you here. Alright, and what we're going to do is we're going to, let me just see if I can pause that for a second. And we're going to go through, and what we're going to do now is we're going to edit the envelopes. Okay, so I'm going to hit this little edit envelopes button, and I'm going to go down through all of my, hold on one second, let's pause this. We're going to edit the envelopes, there we go. We're going to take a look at what bones are affecting the character geometry and how much they're affecting it. Okay? Let me see if I can do this while it's running. There we go. That's what I was looking for. Okay? So each of these different bones that we added to control the character now are affecting the geometry. They're actually affecting each one of the points on the outside of its geometry. Alright? The values that you're seeing there, alright, like the blue and the yellow and the red, have to do with how intensely they're pulling on the character's skin. Okay? So if you see blue, it's kind of lightly tugging on it. You see yellow, it's pulling pretty hard. If you're seeing red, it's rigidly going with it. Okay? Now, what you got to think about is that there are different bones that are also affecting that geometry too. Okay? So if you have a point that's red and it's hooked up to like the calf bone is explicitly moving it. It's going to make it really difficult for any other bone to move it. So you're kind of playing this game where you have to go back through and you have to edit the envelopes. You got to kind of adjust the skin solution so that the bones that you want to control certain points are going to control certain points, and the bones that you don't want to control certain points aren't going to control other points. Okay, so if we look down through here, the calf has like some effect on this. The foot has a lot of effect on like those toe points. The forearm is pretty loose there. The palm is doing quite a bit just in some places. Right? Now watch this. Let's go up to the pelvis. Okay, remember the pelvis? We made the pelvis bone huge, so we actually made the little magnetic field that surrounds that bone even bigger. Okay, so right now the pelvis is rigidly affecting the pelvis area itself, but it's also affecting the feet, which we don't want that to touch at all, and the thumbs. So like when my hips move, my thumbs should not move. That's just ridiculous. Okay? So we don't want that either. The other bone that was really big was the rib cage. The rib cage was huge. So the rib cage has a big impact too. Okay? Now I'm going to pause this for a second and let's look at some other things. Do you guys see that little pill-shaped symbol around the outside of the bone? Alright, if you notice there's like a yellow line. That's kind of like the control point on the inside of the magnetic field. Okay? That was built when the computer built the size of the bone. It kind of put that in there. Okay, that's kind of like the core area that's going to be like explicitly red. Around it on the outside, you have like some control points for this other magnetic field here. This is like the area that's like, you know, very rigid. And then you have like kind of like the fallout field out here. This is like the area that is going to start to fall off. So you shouldn't see too many points affected outside of that second fallout area. All right, but all the stuff on this inside area should all be explicitly red. So you can control these skin weights just by kind of shrinking down that magnetic field. Or by shrinking down the magnetic field, like when the bone goes to move, it's going to have less of an effect, or if you expand it, it's going to have more of an effect on the character geometry. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go through and we're going to change that the editing envelope solution, the weighting solution. All right, so I'm going to come back in here, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to, I don't really want to be in this mode where the character's walking. It kind of makes it tough to affect that. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go over to, let's see, I'm going to go over to my cat bones filter. I'm going to pick the base. All right, we're going to go back to setup mode. So we're just looking at our character standing in one place. All right, we're going to go back to our character geometry so that now we can get to the skinning. All right, and I'm going to go into edit envelopes. And what I can do now is I can either just pick individual bones. Go through that one more time. I can pick like each of these, see these bones that are in here? Those are the bones that we set up. So I can pick each one of the bones. Or you can go down through the list. Okay? And what I got to do is I have to change the size of that magnetic field. Alright, so I can kind of start to shrink this down in here if I want it to be a little bit less rigid. I can start to shrink down the area on the outside. Okay, I got to be careful though. While I'm eliminating points on the outside, I'm also maybe shrinking down stuff on the inside that I do want to move. Okay, so you got to be like pretty careful about that. Alright, the other thing I can do, if you click on this little check mark here for just vertices, you can actually select vertices by themselves. Alright, and then you can actually change down here, see this absolute effect value? You can actually change that value between 0 and 1 to tell the computer how much you want it to control that specific vertex. So over in here, like right around like the armpit area, I probably want that to move a little bit with the rib cage. It should move a little bit. So like if we were to pick some of these points in here, alright, and just kind of affect that absolute value, that might be like kind of in the bluer area, like maybe like yellow to blue. Alright, down here like right underneath the armpit, that can probably stay closer to red. Alright, but then all this stuff out here, we can drop that down to 0. Okay? And if you get into a couple of vertices that don't want to change color, it's because every vertex has to be pulled by a bone. Okay, so you can't leave something out. So if you're having trouble changing something, like let's say I can't change this point, like it just stays red, it's probably because another bone doesn't affect it. So you have to play with those two bones at the same exact time, right? So if I go over here to this other bone, alright, this is the arm. When the arm bone moves right in there, probably around the muscle area, the bicep, it's going to have to go. So we definitely want to make sure that that set of vertices kind of in this area here, alright, are absolutely going to move. So like maybe we crank that up a little bit. Okay? Let's crank that up a little bit in the middle. Down in here where we put like some room for the skin to stretch, we want that to start going from yellow to blue. Okay? So like right around in this ballpark area, and I might even want to switch over to my spray paint selection tool so I can just spray paint vertices to select them. Okay? And now we can start to kind of mess with that a little bit. So like let's say we go yellow, maybe over in here we go blue. So that value is going to be like 0.2-ish. And then let's see, all this stuff down here will go 0. Okay, up in here, maybe make that like a yellow. Up in the armpit area, we'll go blue. So that's how I would want that bone pretty much affecting the points on that outside of that geometry, and then we just keep going right down through. Okay, so I want to make sure that the bones are only affecting points that we want them to affect. Over here, like again, rib cage, I'm just checking this one more time. Rib cage should not be affecting anything over here by the elbow. Okay, in this little area, maybe we could go like a light blue, just a little bit. In here, keep it yellow. Alright, I'm just going to check the hips one time. Ooh. We don't want anything to do with the hands. Drop that totally off. See this down here? That was what I was talking about. So those points right around the thumb, the red area, I'll bet you there's no other bone affecting that fingertip. So let's go over here real quick. Yep. See that? So we do want to make sure that those points are controlled by the hand bone. Go in here, make this like blue. In here I got some points that are controlled. Let's see. Bump that up a little bit. Okay, now we'll go back to the hip bone and check. Now can I get rid of these? Can I turn this off? Yeah, no problem. So a bone has to affect a point. Every point on the entire character model has to have some effect on it. Okay? And this is the hips, so I don't really want the chest moving a whole lot. Probably even up in this area, we probably want to start going like blue to yellow. Somewhere in here. And we certainly don't want any of this side. I don't want to spend all day doing this, so I'm just going to kind of start to shut it down here a little bit. Alright, let me go back. We'll get rid of some stuff down by the legs. This is going to be real sloppy down here. I'm just going to go fast now. Alright. We'll include this just a little bit. We'll include this stuff just a little bit. Alright, let's test it one more time. See how it works. It should be better than the first time we looked at it, but it's still going to be bad. Okay? So it's not going to be great right this second. This is going to take a little bit of work. You're going to have to go through each bone. You have to play that game where we try to kind of fight over what points should control what portions of the character geometry. But when you're done, it's going to look really nice, and you're going to have your character walking in place where it looks a little bit more natural. Okay? Body looks better. Hands look better. If I look at this one area right here, like this set of points needs a little bit of work. Okay? Over here in the arm, there's not a lot of flex there. I'm missing this one little vertex at the back of the fingertips. We can mess with that. Down here by the feet, I'd really have to pay attention to the feet solution. But it's looking a lot better. Okay? It's definitely looking a lot better. The other thing that we're going to eventually want to play around with is the actual motion of the cat object. So right now there's an enormous amount of hip sway. There's an enormous amount of chest rotation there. All right, there is a way that we can change that. Okay, so we can kind of play with those values of how much the hips rotate and move as the character walks, and how big the strides are and everything like that, and where the arms actually move. That's really easy to affect. I don't want to go through that with you right now because it's too much. All right, so this is kind of like the over-exaggerated version. So what I'm going to tell you is, even if you're not getting exactly what you want to see here, when we kind of start to dull down some of those movements and make your character walk a little bit closer to how they normally would when they're not swinging their arms tremendously, it's going to look a lot better too. Okay? So let me have you start the skinning process, and we'll go from there. Okay? And I'll come around and help you if you need help.